In my first video of the proper Pokemon pronunciation series, I focused on legendaries, mythicals, and ultra beasts. For part 2, I'll be focusing on Pokemon released in generations 1 through 4, which means you'll see familiar faces from Red and Blue, Gold and Silver, Ruby and Sapphire, and Diamond and Pearl. Let's go all the way back to the beginning to one of the first Pokemon anyone ever encountered in their journey through the Kanto region. Ever since I was a supple young boy, I said this Pokemon's name really fast, referring to it as Rattata. Why would I think any differently? It's literally spelled like that. But the Pokemon Company really likes destroying people's hopes and dreams, so it's actually called Rattata. This makes no sense to me. There's clearly 2 T's in the middle, not the end, so why is it pronounced like there are? And I feel like in the anime, the actual Pokemon says Rattata, not Rattata, so who are you going to believe? A billion-dollar company or the actual Pokemon? Exactly. Continuing our journey through the Kanto region, we went off the beaten path, faced Gary rather unexpectedly, and ran into these little guys that differ based on their gender. I've always called this Pokemon Nidoran. In reality, I should have been looking down. No, not at my feet, I could lose hours doing that, a bit higher. Because this Pokemon is called Nidoran, as in knee. This extends to the evolution, so you also have Nidorina, Nidoqueen, Nidorino, and Nidoking. Yeah, this one's gonna take a long time to get out of my brain. I can feel your anxiety through the screen at this little guy's image popping up. Well, technically I feel it in the past as I'm alone in a room talking to myself. No, the little fish that evolves into Gyarados isn't called Magikarp, it's actually Magikarp. To further test my Sabrina-like psychic powers, I'm going to guess that half of you already called it Magikarp. If you belong in that group, let me know how smart you are in the comments. You know what, I'm getting bored with the Kanto region. Not nearly enough toes. Let's head over to Johto, where we find the pre-evolution of Forretress. I don't know if it was a dream, or if Brock truly did call it this in the anime, but I've always referred to this Pokemon as Pinecone, like what you do in a canyon to make it seem like somebody's talking to you to stave off your crushing loneliness. Or you know, it's also the name of the dolphin. But the Pokemon Company decided to go the simple route with this guy and just call it Pinecone, cause it's a pine cone? Yeah, Pinecone would have been so much better. Let's bridge the gap between Kanto and Johto with the evolved form of Scyther. The most common mispronunciation is Scyther, while the least common is Scyther. But if you've played Smash Bros, not only are you an intellectual, but you also know it's Scizor. Give this video a like if the only items you ever allow in Smash Bros are Pokeballs. Now let's shift to 2 Pokemon that are lies. Or I guess technically not lies, based on what I'm about to tell you. While you've probably been saying Zigzagoon as Zigzagoon, like pizza, leaving out that extra G because you're not a crazy person, the real menace here is its evolution. Like taking a nap in the middle of the day, it should be Lie-Noon, right? Wrong, it's Line-Noon. It makes sense given that Line-Noon's whole thing is that it runs in straight lines, but it still sounds weird to me. Lie-Noon rolls off the tongue, Line-Noon does not. The other lie Pokemon is the giant suction cup. I always called it Lil Leap, like someone lying to you about how far a jump is. Of course that's wrong. Instead, it's Lil Leap, like you're taking a little tiny baby jump. I swear the Pokemon Company goes out of their way to give certain Pokemon the weirdest pronunciations. If you have a male Kirlia and don't want it to turn into Gardevoir, you can use a Dawnstone to evolve it into Gallade. Yes, it's called Gallade. I always called it Gallade, though in retrospect, the fact that Gallade has to evolve from a male Kirlia should have been the indicator that it ain't a gal. Now let's do an entire evolution line. Roselia is probably what you've always said, and don't worry, that's correct. But the other 2? Unfortunately, you've probably been wrong about them. Just like my dog when he thought that porcupine was friendly. This thing's Badoo and not Boodoo like a ghost, as I've been saying. And this thing's Roserade, not Roserade. Sticking with grass types, we have the evolved form of Turtwade. If you made the connection between grass type and the word grow, that was a mistake. Instead of Grotle, like a growing turtle, it's Grottle, like a rotting turtle, I guess. I don't know, I didn't bother looking up the name origin. Let's take a look at a couple of baby Pokemon before they grow up way too quickly and we foolishly try to make another baby well into our 40s, even though we should be thinking about raising the kids we have instead of trying to recapture the magic of welcoming a new life into the world. The pre-evolved form of Sudowoodo isn't pronounced Bonsley like Bruce Lee. Instead, it said Bon Sly like Sly Cooper or Sly Stallone. Why Sly is the shorthand for Sylvester, well, that makes even less sense than calling it Bon Sly. And the pre-evolved form of Peekaboo isn't Azaril, it's Azuril, like how all those Pokemon outside the Safari Zone in Kanto are locked in cages, just like zoo animals. Moving from babies to fossils, despite starting with an O, neither of these Pokemon have an O sound in their name. This means that instead of Omanite and Omastar, you should be referring to them as Omanite and Omastar, or Lord Helix, depending on how old you are. This next one's only for certain people in certain parts of the world. Depending on where you live, you might have called this Porygon Z, because you say the letter Z as Zed. But officially, this guy is called Porygon Z, like Dragon Ball Z. Damn Americans. You probably think Ludwig's favorite Pokemon is pronounced Lopunny, like someone telling a quiet joke, but that'd make too much sense. The Lola Bunny equivalent for Pokemon fans is actually called Lapani. Yeah, Lapani. Or how about the Lightning Cats? The pre-evolution is Electrike instead of Electrike, and the big cat is Manectric, like for my next trick, instead of Manectric, like oh man, I really hope Flygon gets a Mega Evolution too. Speaking of Flygon, you've been saying that right, same with Trapinch, but not the middle evolution. While you've been saying Vibrava, like Ribcage, you should have been saying Vibrava. I completely forgot this guy was released in Generation 2, probably because I never used it, and also possibly because the pre-evolution Mantike didn't come out until Gen 4, and Mantike also happens to be another Pokemon I never used. Regardless, the Kite Pokemon holds the award for the name the smug kid in school will correct people on the most, all in an effort to make other people think he's the smartest one in the class, but it's futile, because all anyone's gonna remember him for is crying when we played that game with the parachute and he couldn't get out in time before it fell on top of him and he thought he was gonna be stuck in there forever. Anyways, any sane person would call this Mantine like the tines on a fork. After all, it's the Kite Pokemon, not the Keat Pokemon. But good old Pokemon Company says this is officially called Mantine, as in the last time in my life I felt happiness was when I was a teen. Now we come to two Pokemon that the Pokemon Company tries to convince us we all love, when we all know the Beaver was the first Pokemon kicked out of our party as soon as someone better came along, unless we really needed an HM slave. I regret to inform you that it's not Bidoof and Bibarel, but rather Bidoof and Bibarel. Yeah, the Bidoof I could let slide, but Bibarel? Instead of barrel, like the only interesting part of the Hobbit trilogy, you say the last part like you're cold. Bibarel. Or I guess kind of like the dad from Modern Family, Ty Burrell. Speaking of freezing your Pokeballs off, we have the Ice and Ground type and the evolved form of Swinub, Piloswine. There's a decent number of you who pronounce it as Piloswine, likely because you want to sleep on its comfy looking fur, but you should have been thinking of piling on top of it and trying not to be gored by its tusks. Coincidentally, Fulgore and Tusk are two characters from one of the greatest fighting games of all time, Killer Instinct Gold. Let's finish up with two Pokemon from the Hoenn region. The little camel is called Numbel, like Martin Mull, not Numel, like new car smell, while the baby dragon with slick back hair is Bagon, not Bagon like Bagel. As jarring as it may seem for some people, when you think about them, they do both make sense. You say Numbel like how you say camel, and you say Bagon like how you say baby. And that wraps up another episode of Trust Your Pilot, reaching deep into your soul and beating up your inner child. Now that we've taken a look at some Pokemon from Generations 1 through 4, next up is Generations 5 through 8. So stay tuned for more glass-shattering moments next time on Trust Your Pilot Didn't Know How Else to End This Video.